छुट्टी के बाद हम लोग वापस मिल रहे हैं सब। हमारी छुट्टी अच्छी रही होगी, रिलैक्स किया होगा सबने, और मिस भी किया होगा सुबह सुबह गीता के इस कार्यक्रम को। मेरी तो नींद रोज के जैसे खुल गई थी, पर फिर याद आया कि नहीं, आज क्लास नहीं है। चलिए हम भगवत गीता के आज अध्याय 9 के बारे में बात करेंगे, उसको जानेंगे समझेंगे और उस पे हम चलें। उसके पहले हम रोज की भांति आज भी एक छोटा सा मेडिटेशन करेंगे और फिर हम राम जी को सुनेंगे। स्वाति जी।
सुप्रभात। आप सभी का स्वागत। रिलैक्स होके बैठ जाइए, आंखों से अपना चश्मा हटा लीजिए। बाहर का चश्मा हटाते ही हमारी नजर हमारे अंदर केंद्रित हो जाती है। आज हम इस मेडिटेशन में अपने अंदर की एक जर्नी करेंगे, अपने सभी ऑर्गन्स को हील करते हुए, उसमें जो भी स्टोर्ड एंड सप्रेस्ड इमोशंस हैं उन्हें रिलीज करते हुए। I take a deep breath in and out, in and out, invoking the energies of the divine to be with me in this internal journey today, to help me see what I need to see and to help me release what I need to release. Krishna, 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 Krishna. I relax all the muscles in and around my eyes. I keep my spine as straight as possible. I take a deep breath in and out. I relax my throat. I take another deep breath. This breath fills my abdomen, and as I exhale, I let go of any thoughts about the past or the future. I rest my tongue on the roof of my mouth near my teeth. I smile gently and allow this smile to soften my face and relax my thoughts. I now see myself standing on a path at the edge of a small forest. The bright sun warms my back. The cool breeze from the forest is inviting me to enter. The path is clear and broad, and I step into the forest. I can hear the birds calling to one another. Their sounds are gentle and sweet. It is as if they are encouraging me to take a few more steps into their home. And I step into the forest. I walk a little, and the peace of the forest fills me with peace. As I walk on, I begin to hear the sound of running water, and I walk towards it. As I walk, I can feel the leaves under my feet and the small branches and roots on the ground. Now I see a little clearing in the forest, and in the middle of the clearing is a small pool. Besides the pool, there is a bench. I move towards the bench and lie down to rest and relax. A gentle smile plays on my lips, and now bring my energy to the space between my eyebrows and allow the smile to rest there. As I continue to smile, the energy expands upwards towards the center of my head. Now I take this energy and direct it in turn to each of my internal organs, giving special attention to any area of my body that needs healing. I smile into my liver and gallbladder. Liver and gallbladder are associated with anger. So as I smile into these organs, I dissolve anger and resentment. If my liver feels tense when I smile into it, I think about whether I need to forgive someone or let go of resentment. I smile into my stomach and spleen. Stomach and spleen are associated with worry. Smiling into my stomach can bring me back to my center and dissolve the anxiety. I smile. I keep smiling, smiling, smiling at my stomach and spleen till they smile back to me. And if I'm finding it difficult, in my day-to-day life, I may choose to work staying in the present moment and release this need to worry about the future. I smile into my kidneys and bladder. Kidneys and bladder are associated with fear. Smiling into my kidneys can help me relieve and release fear and stress. And if I'm finding it difficult, I ponder and reflect what stops me from feeling safe and secure. I smile into my lungs and large intestine. Lungs and large intestines are associated with grief. Smiling into my lungs can help me to relieve and release depression or sadness. I smile into my heart and small intestine. Heart and small intestine are associated with joy or the lack of it. Smiling into my heart fills me with compassion. If I find this difficult, I may want to think about any hatred that I am hanging on, and I can now release it now. I spend a few minutes slowly breathing the smiling energy into each organ. Krishna, 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 Krishna. Finally, I direct my smiling energy to a point 2 fingers below my navel. If I wish, I can release my smile now, or if it feels good, I can hold on to it. I release my tongue from the roof of my mouth. I rise from the bench, walk, and come out of the jungle back to my room. I let go of the images, if any. I rub my palms, put them on my eyes. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Coming back to the here and now with a smile internally and externally. Welcome back.
Over to you, Ram.
Thank you, Anurag. Swati, thank you very much. Very, very nice as usual. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Let us begin blessings of Sri Krishna. Ask him to guide us. Namaskara, Shubhodaya. Good morning. Welcome back, and we begin the exploration of the Gita today with chapter 9. And this is a very, very interesting chapter. In many ways, it is the midway of the Gita. So we successfully reached the halfway point in our entire inquiry, and we are now moving on. So if you recall, in the chapter 7 and chapter 8, Krishna talks about the power of faith and devotion, and he tells that, look, if you want to achieve anything that you'd like to achieve in your life, then you must start practicing faith and devotion in everything that you're going to be doing. And in many ways, this particular message is extremely essential to all of us, because this is the message that Krishna wants us to take back. That, look, it is faith and devotion that can move mountains in this world. And it is this faith and this devotion that we need to practice in everything that we do on a daily basis. And this is your Swadharma. That if you are completely engrossed in what you're doing with a certain amount of faith, with a certain amount of unshakable faith, then obviously you're going to get what you want to get in your life, and your Swadharma will be actualized. So in many ways, Arjuna's thought override process that Krishna began, within chapter 2, is now moving Arjuna from a negative, I will not fight, what is the point of this whole thing, into a more positive area. And this is a very, very significant move that happens to Arjuna, because what he is doing right now is that he is now moving from an area which is plagued by doubt into an area which is where he is more receptive to whatever Krishna has to now convey to him. So we begin this particular chapter with verse 1 and verse 2. Srini, with your help.
अथ नवमोऽध्यायः श्रीभगवानुवाच इदं तु ते गुह्यतमम् प्रवक्ष्याम्यनसूयवे ज्ञानं विज्ञानसहितं यज्ञात्वा मोक्ष्यसे शुभात्। राजविद्या राजगुह्यम् पवित्रमिदमुत्तमम् प्रत्यक्षावगमम् धर्म्यम् सुसुखम् कर्तुमव्ययम्।
Fantastic. Anurag, will you help us read the?
जी, श्री भगवान बोले, अर्जुन, तू दूसरों को दोष देने वाली धारणा से मुक्त है। तेरे लिए वो रहस्य फिर अच्छी तरह से कहूंगा जिसको विज्ञान सहित जानने के बाद तुम अशुभ संसार बंधन से मुक्त हो जाओगे। यह ज्ञान राजविद्या, जो कि विद्याओं का राजा है और सब रहस्यों का राजा है, यह पवित्र, उत्तम, प्रत्यक्ष ज्ञान वाला और धर्मयुक्त है तथा करने में सरल और अव्यय है, अर्थात इसको प्राप्त करना बहुत सुगम है।
Wonderful. So he tells Arjuna, he says, look, I am now going to reveal. Can we go back to that earlier slide, Shini? Slide 1. So he tells Arjuna, see Arjuna, since you are free of any envy, since you are free of any doubt, I am now going to share with you a very profound secret knowledge. So in many ways, this particular chapter is also referred to as the Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Yoga, okay, chapter. So he says, look, since I have now brought you into a phase that you are without doubt, I am now ready to share with you a very, very important secret, Arjuna. Okay? And so what Krishna is trying to tell us is this, that look, when you're free of doubt, when you're free of ignorance, and when you're free of impure thoughts, that is the time that you get free of doubt, and that is the time when you are now ready for a deeper lesson of life. You see, this is this whole point of conditioning that we are all going through. That we need to come up, we need to at least create that conducive environment for us to receive an input that is important to us in our life. If we are not even going to create that conducive environment, then it is impossible for you to receive that particular knowledge. And that is the whole point that Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna here, that Arjuna, since you're not envious, since you're free of doubt, I mean, the various ways of interpreting this particular line. And he says, because of the fact that you are now free of envy, I am now going to tell you something that will dispel all the thoughts that you have in your mind. Slide 2, Srini. Okay. He says, I am going to reveal to you this Rajavidya Rajaguhyam. And what is this? This is Pavitram Uttamam. Okay, Pavitram Idam Uttamam, which means that this is the most holy of holy stuff that I'm going to be explaining to you. You need to experience it, you need to understand it, you need to practice it. So the point that Krishna is trying to drive to all of us through Arjuna and to all of us is this, that look, when faith and devotion, which is bhakti, are combined with focus and practice, which is abhyasa, with the weapon of non-attachment, which is vairagya, then obviously you are going to be well and truly on your way of achieving what you want to achieve in your life. So it's very important that we internalize this fact, that you need to have that faith, you need to have that belief in yourself, you need to have that devotion to a higher self that you are capable of. Call it God, call it Purushottam, call it the inner self of your own. You need to have that devotion, you need to have that bhakti, but you need to also have that one-pointed focus in life, that you do what you need to be doing, you need to practice it, you need to practice abhyasa with vairagya. So if you can get these 5 things going, then there is no doubt about the fact that you will get the kind of results that you want to get. But he goes on to explain something interesting in verse 3, 4, and 5. He says, look, if your faith is not strong, then you will not be able to achieve what you want to go, what you want to get. So this is the key, that faith in our own ability, that belief in our own ability is something which is extremely important for us. And without that particular faith, it is impossible for us to achieve anything that we want to achieve in life. Keep this in mind. So the beginning of everything is that faith. And he says that, look, if your faith is not strong, then you will not be able to achieve what you want to achieve in your life. Keep this in mind. So that faith, so it all starts with that. So how do you start recognizing that supreme being? Okay, how do you start recognizing who is this person who is so supreme in life? How do we start figuring out that here is somebody who's that inner self, that higher self that is there, that God which is there, that Godhood which is there, that Krishna which is there, is going to be your constant companion in every effort that you have. And so long as we start practicing that, and so long as we start believing in the greatness of that supreme entity, that supreme Lord, that supreme higher self that resides within you, if you're able to do that, and if you're able to make that into a constant companion in your life, there is nothing really that you can't achieve in life. So we need to figure out a way of making sure that we start doing that. So does this border on blind faith? Maybe. But then can you have that blind faith in your ability to achieve what you want to achieve in your life? Can you develop that particular faith in that extremely supreme being that is obviously there? Okay, because if you can start recognizing this, then you will get what you want to get. In verse 4 and 5, he goes on to explain something interesting. He says that, look, all beings are part of me. How do you recognize this? And he says this very interestingly. He says, everybody is within me and I am in everybody. That there is this greatness, there is this inner greatness that is there within you, within everybody. I am in everybody and everybody is in me. And he says, don't think of me as distinct from you. I am in you. As you are, as much as you are in me, I am in you. And therefore, this brings us to a very, very interesting point. Okay, that how do we recognize the greatness of Krishna? How do we recognize the greatness of this supreme entity, this Lord, this divinity that is there within every one of us? And he goes on to explain this in a beautiful stanza, which is stanza number 6. Srini, if you can help me bring that up, please.
तथाकाशस्थितो नित्यम् वायुः सर्वत्र गोमः तथा सर्वाणि भूतानि तानीत्युपधारय.
जैसे सब जगह विचरने वाली महान वायु नित्य ही आकाश में स्थित रहती है, ऐसे ही संपूर्ण प्राणी मुझ में ही स्थित रहते हैं, ऐसा तुम मान लो.
So this is his manifestation, and he says, look, he explained to us in verse 4 and 5, saying that like I am in everybody and everybody is in me, and he's giving us this beautiful example. This is an example that look like the mighty wind that moves everywhere and is still nowhere. Nobody can capture the wind and say, this is mine. You can't put the wind that is blowing in a box. You can't put it in a bottle. You can't keep it anywhere that you want. You can't lock it up in a room. And he gives this beautiful example. He says, like the wind that blows everywhere, so do I. So is everybody resting within me. And therefore, we must now at some point of time take that leap of faith and say that there is this particular inner higher self that resides in every human being. And so does it here. So he goes on to explain something interesting from now on. From verse 7, 8. In verse 7 and 8, he explains a very interesting concept. If you recall in chapter 8, he talked about this entire Brahma Kala Yuga. Okay. He comes back and he says that, look, I create all these beings at the beginning of a yuga. And when that yuga gets over, all these beings come back into me. And at the next time, I bring all these beings out. So what he's trying to say to us is this, that look, at the beginning of any Prakriti, at the beginning of any cycle of evolution, it is I who manifest myself in everybody. And then at the end of that particular yuga, everybody gets automatically dissolved into me. So what he is saying is this, that while I create the Prakriti, I am not attached in any way to that. So I am part of it, but I'm not part of that whole Prakriti, the game of Prakriti that I'm going to be doing. And this is very, very important for us from another perspective. Can we actually make sure that we get out of this entire business of getting attached to what we are doing? We explored this in great detail some time back, saying, can the outcome of our action will have certain manifestations? Can we break that link of arrogance and attachment out there? If you recall in chapter 2, from verse 62 and 63, he talks about the way people will actually fall. He says, when you get attached to something, what happens is that it breeds arrogance. And with that arrogance comes desire. From desire flows anger. When anger comes, ignorance comes in. With ignorance comes the confusion of memory. And with confusion of memory, the intellect gets completely clouded. And once that happens, all is lost. So what Krishna is telling us in verse 11 and 12 is this, that the foolish people disrespect me. It is the ignorant people who despise me, who disrespect me. They think, what is this? I mean, I've taken birth in a body. And he is trying to send a subtle message to Arjuna that look at what your cousins, the Kauravas, have done. They disrespect me. And the fact that they disrespect me is because they are foolish, they are ignorant. They do it out of their arrogance. And therefore, if whatever we've achieved in our life till now, and some of us have achieved a lot, some of us have still to achieve, some of us are going to achieve a lot, it doesn't really matter. But the lesson here is very simple. Don't let that attachment to what you've achieved make you arrogant. On the contrary, whatever you've achieved in your life till now must make you humble. That look, you have worked hard, you've got what you've got. You need to be humble about it. You need to have humility with you, driving you, rather than ignorance and arrogance. And that's what he tells us in verse 11 and 12, that it is the ignorant, the foolish, they disrespect this higher inner self within me. And it is only these people, because of their foolishness, because of their arrogance, because of their over-attachment to what they've achieved in life, that makes them arrogant. And the day you get arrogant, that is the time that decline starts, because you desire more and more and more of what you have. And from there, as you recall in chapter 2, we explored that you get into desire, and then you get into anger, and then you get into ignorance, and then you get into confusion, and then finally you lose your path of Swadharma. And therefore in verse 11 and 12 he's telling us this, that look, it is the foolish people who despise me, who don't recognize the greatness that I actually show, or the greatness that is there within you. So a very important lesson to us here: don't allow this arrogance to come in and take over. If you recall, some time back we did this whole concept that I am not the doer in life, that there is somebody else who's getting me to do what I want to do in my life. And therefore, can we get out of this entire business of I am the doer? Is that possible? And he says very interestingly, it is the wise ones who are devoted to me. Their faith is unflinching. If you remember, he talks about Jnanam and Vijnanam, the royal secret. He says the royal secret is this: it is those people who are wise, who have an unflinching faith, and they worship me, they praise me, they are steadfast in their devotion to me. Look at the beauty of what he's trying to tell us. That look, if it is that wisdom that makes you get onto the path of devotion and focus in life. It is that wisdom that gets you that entire thing. And then he talks about the fact that there are very, very many different ways of worshiping me. There are very many different ways in which you can actually, how do you actually worship him? Where do you see him and how do you worship him? But he talks about this very importantly, that it is the knowledge and the wisdom that you have That is very, very important. So, in verse 15, he talks about something interesting. He says, look, any kind of a worship that you do, in whatever way you do, is good. So long as you're doing it with devotion, you're doing fine. So who are you worshiping? In effect, you're worshiping the higher self that is there within you. You're worshiping the divinity that is there within you, and this divinity that is present in everybody else that you're going to be encountering. So there is nobody who's less, nobody who's greater than you, nobody is less than you. And therefore, keep this thought in mind when you're practicing the entire devotion that you want to do in life. If you recall, in chapter 7, in those beautiful verses 8 to 11, he talks about how do you know what are the physical manifestations of Krishna. And he talks about the fact that I am the taste of water, I am the smell of the earth, I am, the strength of the strength, and the strength of the strong. And he goes on, he describes that at great length to us as to where all can you see me outside. And now Krishna is taking us inside and he's saying, how can you worship him? What are the various ways in which you can worship this higher self? What are the kind of ways that you're actually going to be doing? And look at this particular stanza that we picked for you, stanza number 16 to 20. We'll go through each stanza by stanza. Srini? Yeah, we'll do each stanza, Srini. Yeah, go ahead. You're mute, Srini, so I think we can't hear you, that's why. Look at the beauty of
Chaturaham yajñah swadhahamaham mantrohamahame-vajyam ahamagniraham hutam.
मैं ही स्रोत, मैं ही यज्ञ, मैं ही पितरों का दान, मैं ही औषधि, मैं ही मंत्र, मैं ही घृत, मैं ही अग्नि और मैं ही आहुति भी हूं.
So see what he's trying to tell us. If you recall, one of the important things that Krishna is telling us through the Gita is this whole issue of sacrifice, which is yajna. Okay? And if you recall what he talks about yajna is a way of sustenance. That if you were to perform that yajna properly, then obviously it will get, his example to us is very simple, that if you were to perform that sacrifice, if you were to perform that action properly, then rain will come, and if rain comes, then food will come, and if food comes, that is how human beings are sustained. Now, he is giving us this entire explanation to us, that I am the person who is the sacred ritual. I am the sacrifice. I am the fire in the sacrifice. When you're offering anything called swadha, that is, whenever if you recall, if you perform a yajna, then there is this whole thing. When you offer ghee into that, you say swadha. Okay, swaha. When you put that ghee, he says, look, I am the fire. I am the offering. So whatever is your action that you're taking, in the form of whatever you're doing right now, I am that. Okay. The next one, Srini, verse number 17, wherein he goes. So keep those slides on, Srini. We don't have to come out of it. Okay, because we need to do 17, 18, 19, 20 now. 17, yes.
Pitahamasya jagataha mata dhata pitamaha vedyam pavitram onkaraha ritsamaya jurevacha.
Right, Anurag?
मैं ही इस जगत का पिता, माता, धाता और पितामह हूँ. मैं वेद जानने योग्य वस्तु हूँ. पवित्र ओंकार, ऋग्वेद, सामवेद और यजुर्वेद भी मैं ही हूँ.
So look at, so Srini, we'll just keep these slides on right now. We don't have to get out of these slides, okay? Because I think we've got another 4 slides of these. So look at what he's saying now. Earlier, he told us that I am the sacred fire, I am the sacrifice, I am the ghee, I am everything that you offer in the action. Now he takes us into creation. He says, I am the father, I am the mother, I am the creator, I am the sustainer. I am the person who is actually responsible for the entire creation. I am Om, the sacred syllable Om that we utter. I am the Vedas, I am the Rig Veda, the Samaveda, the Yajurveda, which means I am the entire knowledge. I am creation and I am the entire knowledge of what you have. Yes, Srini, we'll go to slide number 18. Okay.
गतिर्भर्ता प्रभुः साक्षी निवासः शरणं सुहृत् प्रभवः प्रलयस्थानम् निधानं बीजमव्ययम्.
गति, लक्ष्य, भरण पोषण करने वाला, प्रभु, साक्षी, निवास, शरण स्थान तथा मित्र और उत्पत्ति, प्रलय रूप तथा स्थान, निधान और अव्यय कारण भी मैं हूं.
So, this is one thing that he dispels very clearly. There is this whole thought that, the Gita doesn't talk about a goal. Gita makes you goalless. No, the Gita is about a goal. Okay. And this is what he's trying to tell us here, saying that, look, I am right? I am the goal of all living beings. Okay. That when you, look at the kind of support that I'm going to give you when you're working on your Swadharma. I am the sustainer. I am the master. I am the witness. I am the abode. I am the shelter. I am the friend. I am the origin, I am the end. So I will support you in any which way. So first thing he says in verse number 16, that look, all the action that you perform, I am there. I am part of your creation. I'm there at the beginning. I am there when you need the support that you want. All the support that we require. He says, look, I am there in that. Yeah, can we go on to the next one, sir?
तपाम्यहमहं वर्षं निगृह्णाम्युत्सृजामि च अमृतं चैव मृत्युश्च सदसच्चाहमर्जुन.
हे अर्जुन, मैं ही सूर्य रूप में तपता हूँ, मैं वर्षा का निग्रह और उत्सर्जन करता हूँ, मैं ही अमृत और मृत्यु एवं सत और असत हूँ.
Okay, and this is what he's saying again, that look, wherever you see me, I am there. Whether I am the heat in the sun, okay, I send forth the rain. And therefore, this whole point of Krishna saying that, look, this is all the ways that you can get immersed in what I am doing. This is my grand plan, Arjuna. Okay, Srini, can we go on to 20, please? Yeah.
त्रैविद्यामां सोमपाः पूतपापाः यज्ञैरिष्ट्वा स्वर्गतिं प्रार्थयन्ते ते पुण्यमासाद्य सुरेन्द्रलोकम् अश्नन्ति दिव्यान् दिवि देवभोगान्.
Okay. And Anurag, sorry, go ahead.
तीनों वेदों के ज्ञाता अर्थात वेदोक्त सकाम कर्म करने वाले, सोमपान करने वाले एवं पापों से पवित्र हुए पुरुष मुझे यज्ञों के द्वारा पूजकर स्वर्ग प्राप्ति चाहते हैं. वे पुरुष अपने पुण्यों के फल रूप इंद्रलोक को प्राप्त कर स्वर्ग में दिव्य देवताओं के भोग भोगते हैं.
So he is now talking about the various forms. From 20 to 24, he goes on to talk about the various ways in which people pray. And he's talking about the Trividya, the people, the practitioners of the Vedic way. He says they go higher and they don't return because once their punya is exhausted, then they come back. But the point is there are those who are totally devoted to me and they come to me. There's a beautiful verse number 22 in this, in which he talks about Yogakshema Vaham Yaham, okay, which, if you recall, is the LIC, is the Life Insurance Corporation tagline, okay, wherein he says that, look, whatever it is that you want to achieve in life, you will achieve. I will protect you. So when you're working on your Swadharma, he goes on to assure us that, look, whatever God that you worship, there is no problem. I am there. I will protect you. I will protect whatever you have achieved in your life. Trust me. Trust that higher self, and you will achieve what you want to achieve in life. I will protect whatever you have achieved in your life. Okay? I'm there for you. And then he talks very importantly about one point. He says, you can adopt any way of worshipping me. So long as you're going to be worshipping the higher self in life, you're doing fine. So long as you have this, this way of reaching out to divinity, then I think you're doing extremely well in whatever you want to do. So these 5 stanzas, these 5 verses are a very integral part of what Krishna is trying to explain to each one of us. That, look, keep this in mind, okay? The first thing that you need to keep in mind is this, that when you're actually looking at it, that whatever is the action that you perform, I am there as part of your Swadharma. Whatever is the creation, your father, your mother, etc., I am there. I am there in the sacred syllable Om. I'm part of that. I am part of that entire support system that you want. I am the sun. I'm the goal. I sustain whatever efforts that you want. And more importantly, he says, I am the imperishable. And then he finally says that, look, whatever way you practice your sacrifice, remember when we are talking of this entire issue of sacrifice, it is the kind of work that you're doing on your Swadharma. Whatever you do, I will protect it. And I am there to ensure that you reach whatever you want to reach in your life. And these stanzas are extremely important to us. That, look, we can choose whichever mode of worship that we want. Krishna does not ever tell. And I think this is the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita, because he doesn't say that there is one way that you should do and there is no other way that you should do. This is the only way to do it. Each of us can choose whatever is our Swadharma, and each of us can choose whatever is the action that we want to perform, but do it with faith, do it with devotion, and you will get the kind of results that you have to get. And that is, I think, the quintessential point that Krishna is making to us in this entire chapter. That, look, do it with faith, do it with devotion. I am there to protect whatever you have achieved in your life. Don't let that attachment cause arrogance, because if it does, then you get into a foolish, deluded space and you're not going to get there. He moves this whole thing now into another way, which is, all right, if this is the way, this is how you worship, this is the various ways in which you worship, what is the ideal way to worship? Okay? And sometimes, we as human beings can get into this whole dilemma saying that my way of worship is superior to yours, or your way of worship is superior to me. And then unfortunately today, another very interesting thing has happened. We have brought in a lot of ostentation into the way we worship. Okay? And look at this particular 2 stanzas that he talks about. And he brings us down into, he brings us down into reality as to what is the way in which you need to worship. Srini, will you help me? Verse 26 and verse 27, please.
पत्रं पुष्पं फलं तोयं यो मे भक्त्या प्रयच्छति तदहं भक्त्युपहृतम् अष्टामि प्रयतात्मनः।
जो कोई भी भक्त मेरे लिए पत्र, पुष्प, फल, जल आदि भक्ति से अर्पण करता है, उस शुद्ध मन के भक्त का वह भक्ति पूर्वक अर्पण किया हुआ पत्र पुष्पादि मैं भोगता हूं, अर्थात स्वीकार करता हूं.
Just hold this, Srini. So look at how he is bringing it down to simplicity. He says, look, whatever it is that you want to offer it with devotion. whether it is a leaf. Okay. Now the fact is that you will always find a leaf somewhere or the other in life. And if you want to perform this, do it with a leaf, do it with a flower, do it with fruit. You don't have even that, do it with water. But do it with a lot of love. Do it as if you're doing it with pure consciousness. Because if you were to do this, and whatever it is that you want to offer to me, I will accept. Because you are giving this to me with a huge amount of devotion. And when you're giving this to me with devotion, I have no problem in terms of accepting what you have given to me with devotion. Yeah, can we go to the next one, Srini? This has to be read in conjunction with that.
यत्करोषि यदश्नासि यज्जुहोषि ददासि यत् यत्तपस्यसि कौन्तेय तत्कुरुष्व मदर्पणम्।
हे कौन्तेय, तुम जो कुछ कर्म करते हो, जो कुछ खाते हो, जो कुछ हवन करते हो, जो कुछ दान देते हो और जो कुछ तप करते हो, वह सब तुम मुझे अर्पण करो.
Okay, and that's the whole point. That he's giving us so many different examples that whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer as an oblation. I mean, you can offer anything that you feel like. But whatever you do, whether you're going to give a dhan, whether you perform austerity, if you recall, I said throughout the Gita, there are 3 particular themes that Krishna talks about, 4 themes that Krishna talks about. And this is linked to karma, the karma yoga. Okay. The one is the whole business of sacrifice, which is the action that we take for sustainability. The second, he talks about this entire issue of dhan, which is giving in a selfless way. And the third thing that he talks about is austerity, which is tapas. Okay. And he says, how do you live a life of simplicity, or how do you live a life? So he says, whatever it is that you want to do, if you were to perform this as an offering to me, then you are bound to get what you want. And this is a very, very interesting lesson for us. That, if you have it in your mind, that is good enough. If there is some way that you can do something major, please go ahead and do it. There is nothing wrong. But it doesn't mean that whatever you need to do, you need to do it with a lot of ostentation. You don't have to be ostentatious when you're worshipping him. But you need to do this with devotion. You need to do this on a daily basis. That is the important lesson that Krishna is trying to teach us. That it is not how much you are doing, but it is the quality with which you are going to do what you do is more important than the kind of quantity that we normally get lost in. Okay? We get lost in saying that we need to do 5 of this, we need to do 10 of this, we need to do 20 of this, we need to do 25 of that. Fair enough. I mean, if God has given you those kinds of resources and you're able to do it, then please do it. There's nothing wrong. But if you don't have those kinds of resources, then don't do that. You can even just offer some water to him and he's happy. That's a very, very important lesson for all of us in terms of how are we going to be living this whole way. Then he then moves back to Arjuna and he says, okay, Arjuna, how do you recognize a devotee or a bhakta? Let me tell you who's my ideal bhakta. So he's taken us through these 3 or 4 concepts. And now he comes to this final concept and he says, how do you recognize a devotee? How do you recognize someone who's a great bhakta? And he says, look, let me tell you one thing. Everybody is equal to me. I don't hate anybody. Neither do I love excessively anybody. I am not in that business at all. To me, everybody is the same. I have no enemy or somebody dear to me. But let me tell you one thing. He says, that person who is devoted to me, I am in him. So you remember sometime back we said that the soul can be your friend, the soul can be your enemy. Make your soul a friend of yours. Make your inner self, your higher Purusha, the inner soul that you have, make that a friend of yours. How do you make that a friend of yours? This is what he's trying to say. That look, I am going to be in that person who is devoted to me. And then he talks about something very interestingly. I think Sankalp asked this question the last time or the previous time, saying, he goes on to say that, look, even if there is somebody who's seemingly bad in life, who's a wicked person, so long as he is performing these acts of dana, of yajna and tapas with a spirit of devotion, there is a very good chance that he can turn the corner. And this is another very important lesson in this chapter to us, that there is no person on earth who can't do a course correction in life. There is no person on earth, some of us may get a late start, it doesn't matter. But there is nobody on earth who is going to be condemned, because you can always get on to this path of recognizing that higher self, of worshipping that higher self with devotion and bhakti. Everybody has a chance to turn a leaf, and everybody must turn that leaf if you do get that particular chance in life. And that is something which is very, very important. So he says, look, anybody who takes refuge in me, anybody, whether you're a sinner, whether you have a past, it doesn't really matter to me. But if you are devoted to me, you will find me in them. They will find me in them. And this is a very, very crucial lesson that he tells Arjuna, saying, Arjuna, don't worry about the fact that there are people who have done whatever they've done, but so long as these people are going to be figuring out a way to get devoted to me, to start worshipping me, to worshipping that higher self that is there, to worshipping that inner self, that inner higher self that is there within you, if there are people who are going to do that, then there is no problem in that. And he goes on to explain that, look, it doesn't matter what your birth is. It doesn't matter what your vocation is. You could come from any vocation. If you recall, we did the 4 varnas a little while earlier, in which we said there are the thinkers, the strategists, there are the creative guys, there are the doers. It doesn't matter what level that you come from. Anybody and everybody can get into this and perform with devotion. So long as you start practicing this with faith and with bhakti, there is no doubt about the fact that you can get into me. I will actually manifest myself. That greatness within you is something that you can manifest. So we all have this opportunity. All of us have this opportunity to practice it, to practice that devotion, to practice that focus to your higher self. Ultimately, as I said earlier, my own interpretation, if you want to call this God, great. If you want to see that God in a murti, fantastic. If you want to see that God in a temple, fabulous. You please decide, and this is his lesson from this particular chapter. You decide which mode of worship that you want, and he gives us so many different examples of how we can see him. We can see him in the fire. We can see him in our parents. We can see him in the fact that he is a support system. We can see him in this imperishable form. Now you can choose whichever way you want, but his condition is this to us, that look, whatever you do it with faith, do it with devotion. And we end this particular chapter with verse number 34, which sums this whole chapter up in a beautiful way. This is one of the most powerful shlokas of the Bhagavad Gita. If you can repeat it, it'll be very nice.
Manmana bhava madbhaktah madhyadi mam namaskuru mane vaishyasi yuktaivam atmanam matparayanah. Manmana bhava madbhaktah madhyadi mam namaskuru mane vaishyasi yuktaivam atmanam matparayanah.
Thank you. Anurag?
तुम मुझ में स्थिर मन वाले बनो, मेरे भक्त और मेरे पूजन करने वाले बनो, मुझे नमस्कार करो। इस प्रकार मत परायण अर्थात मैं ही जिसका परम लक्ष्य हूं, ऐसे होकर आत्मा को मुझसे युक्त करके तुम मुझे ही प्राप्त होगे।
Okay, so you just hold this slide. So look at what he's saying is Manmana Bhava, which means constantly think of me. Constantly think of this higher self within you. Constantly think of this Uttam Purush which is residing within you. constantly think of this Uttam Purush that is part of your life. And he takes us through this whole thing in which he says that, look, you've got everything. If you recall earlier, he'd mentioned that. And then he goes on to say Mad Bhakto, which means completely be devoted to that higher self, completely be devoted to that Uttam Purush, completely be devoted to that idea of God, completely be devoted to that idea of that supreme personality, to that supreme self which is there within you. Completely be devoted to that. And then he goes and says, offer all your sacrifices to me. Okay, madhyajimam. Okay, which means give me everything. And namaskuru, what does that mean? Respect me. With a lot of respect, treat me with the respect that I want. Treat me with the respect that you have to give me. And more importantly, unite all your actions with me. Fix me as your goal. Make sure that I am your particular goal. And then you will certainly achieve what I want to do. So if we were to develop this one-pointed bhakti, and if we were to practice it with immovable faith, then there is no doubt about the fact that we will achieve whatever we want to achieve. We will want to achieve our Swadharma that Krishna is talking about. So just to do a quick recap of this particular chapter. So this is the Rajaguhyam, Rajavidya that he talks about in the initial one. And he says, I'll tell you this secret because you're free from envy, because you're free from doubt. You are now ready to receive this. And what does he say? He says that, look, if you were to do anything in life, if you want to do anything in this life, you are now ready to receive that. He says, like the great wind that resides everywhere, I reside in every human being. I reside in you. And he is giving that confidence to Arjuna and through Arjuna to all of us, that in each one of us, there is this higher purpose in life. And that it is we who can go out and achieve that particular higher purpose in life. And he says very clearly that it is the great souls who are one-pointed with devotion, and they worship this, and they know that I am the source of all beings. And finally, he goes on to say that there are many, many manifestations of divinity. I can be seen in fire, I can be seen in your parents, I can be seen in the syllable Om, I can be seen in the Rig Vedas, I can be seen in the four Vedas, I can be seen everywhere. I am imperishable. I am your support system. I will protect you. All that you need to do is to go ahead and practice and worship this higher self that is there within you. What does worship this higher self mean? Respect that higher self. Allow that higher self to manifest because that higher self is there. Don't downplay it. And how do you perform that? How do you do? He talks about the power of simplicity. Don't think that you need to do any big things. Even a leaf, even a small drop of water is good enough as far as I'm concerned. You don't really have to, he talks about the entire power of simplicity and he says, whatever you do, whether you eat, you sacrifice, you sleep, you give, you perform austerity, perform it in such a way that your Swadharma is going to be actualized and your Swadharma is going to be achieved. Perform it with that feeling of Arjuna. And then finally, he says something very interesting, that I am the same to one. I don't hate anybody. Anybody can course correct at any point of their life. And can start actualizing that inner higher self, that Godhood that is there in all of us. And how do you do that? You think of me, be devoted to me, do all your actions with me uppermost in your mind, and you will get what you want to get in your life. And this is the royal secret. This is the Rajaguhyam that Krishna explains to Arjuna and through Arjuna to us. So ladies and gentlemen, the secret is very simple. The faith, the belief, the focus, the practice with non-attachment is something that will help all of us actualize that higher self, actualize the Purushottama that is there within, and help us, each of us, move on our Swadharma in achieving whatever we want to achieve. So with that, we complete chapter 9. Om Tat Sat. And as usual, for any observations, any questions, any thoughts, you can take them on.
Those who want to speak can unmute themselves.
Ram, one issue here. You are doing whatever you are doing with full faith and confidence that you are going to achieve what you are going to achieve. But around you, you have a whole group of people who have a whole lot of expectations from you and who are unable to understand what's happening, creating negativity, and therefore transmitting the negativity to me. How does one get out of that? Ram, you have to unmute.
I didn't realize that I've been muted. Good. Thank you for that. You see, when you're working on your path, will you face an obstacle? Yes. If you recall, we did this, I think, in the last 1 or 2 sessions, that you will face obstacles. There is no doubt about that. You will face people who will not be in line with you. Okay? But at the first, the tragedy really, Rahul, is this, that at the first sign of any obstacle, would you want to give up? Or how are you going to continue to be one-pointed in that devotion, in that faith, in your own ability, to achieve, is his lesson to us. Okay? Remember the context of the Gita and remember the context of this lesson to Arjuna. He has only got 7 divisions, whereas Kauravas have got 11 divisions. He's got an unequal fight on his hands. He's got people who are fighting there for personal gain, for personal reason. Okay? So Arjuna has a uphill task in front of him. It's not an easy task. So there is opposition to Arjuna in this fight. Okay? So likewise, in our journey, there is going to be a lot of opposition. That is a given. That is a fact. Just because I am good, just because I am somebody who wants to do something in life. Okay? So when does the entire course of the war change? The course of the war will only change when they see that Arjuna is fighting so bravely and that he is vanquishing one warrior, one Maharati after the other. And that is when the course of the war changes. Okay? So what happens is that in this journey of ours, Rahul, please, you have to expect opposition. It just doesn't mean that because you're doing something great, automatically the whole world will have to like you. No, it isn't. But can you do it with a way in which you can get a lot of devotion? Can you do it with a way? Can you have bhakti working with you? So that bhakti, that devotion that he talks about in this particular chapter, that knowledge, that wisdom that you require of recognizing his support for you in everything that you're doing, that will keep you going, Rahul. Okay? The lesson here is simple, Rahul. Don't give up. Will you meet opposition? Yes. Should you give up? No. Yes, Drin, what would have happened if the Pandavas had lost the war and had... Sorry, what was your question, Drin?
Yeah. So we talk about different offerings, water, phalam, patram, all that.
Just 1 minute, ma'am.
Sure, yeah.
One of the persons who I respect a lot has asked a question. What would have happened if the Pandavas had lost the war? All faith is put on one person. Wow. Drin, I really have no answer for this question. Yeah. I really have no answer to it. His question is that what would have happened if they would have lost the war? Yes, I mean, that's a possibility. Why not? That they could have lost the war. Absolutely. All faith was put on one person. Sure, Drin. I mean, that is reality also that, that could have happened. But I think the point, Drin, is this, that the Gita, according to me, is a way of life. Okay? So how are you going to be practicing your life in a way that you're going to be achieving your Swadharma? Okay? In the process, are you always going to taste victory? No. But at least if you do taste a fall, if you do taste a defeat at some point of time, I think the issue is how can you bounce back? And to me, I think the whole this whole song of the Gita is about how can we get back to doing what we need to be doing. I think that's the point. So if they would have lost the war, maybe that's an event. But would these teachings have helped them to come back, to bounce back? Possibly yes. Don't also forget another thing, Drin, that it is 3 times, this is the 3rd occasion, okay, that the Pandavas lost everything. Okay, if they would have lost this war, it would have been the 3rd time in their life. And the first 2 times they lost it for whatever reason. Okay, but they kept bouncing back. And I think this lesson that he has taught is possibly that. Yes, ma'am, please go ahead. You were asking a question. Ma'am, I can't hear you. You need to unmute yourself, please. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm talking about the various offerings that he's talking in this chapter, Phalam, Patram, Jalam, whatever. So is there a deeper meaning in this that, we should always be in that mode of giving before we, expect or we are, seeking anything from anywhere in this world? Like, ye kya sanketik hai ya he actually, means about.
It is a combination of both, ma'am. It is a combination of both. In one way, he's saying that, look, it is the power of simplicity. Make sure that whatever that you would like to offer in life, you can do it with simplicity. So he's trying to tell us that, look, you don't really have to wait to begin this entire path of faith and devotion. You could begin at any point of time with anything that you have. There is no need for you to wait that, till this happens, only then am I going to do this or whatever it is. That's one way of looking at this whole thing. That look, you don't have to wait. You can do whatever you feel like. And that is the message that he's giving us, saying that don't wait, get on with this path as quickly as possible. Do it with whatever you have. You can actually do that. That is his message to us.
Thank you.
Ramji, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
So Ramji, I personally feel, first and foremost, thank you very much, Ramji.
Okay.
And secondly, I feel that this whole teaching that we are learning, we are talking about, you are explaining to us, is it not kind of a surrender to God? So I think Pandavas would have 100% won it because they had Krishna with him, first and foremost. And that is exactly what Krishna is trying to tell Arjun in this whole journey till now, whatever it is, that he needs to have faith and he needs to surrender to him. And he needs to give away the attachments, basically, to all the relations that, he's looked up to in his life. So there is a winning part. It's only that, so there is a winning part. Only thing is asking you is that quite clear about how you need to, pray and you need to surrender and you need to believe in Narayan the most. But the only thing is that in our journey that we have, because there's certain things that every one of us has to go through your own karmas, whatever your karmas is and whatever your path is that you have to go through. Quite like what Arjuna had to go through that part, although he was Krishna's favorite and although he was, the best Dhanudari, the Shresh, but still he had to go through that whole path of his. So likewise, we also all have to go through our part of the whole thing. But the thing is that, like what you said, to give away attachment, yes, of things, you can just give it and shed it off very easily. But the attachment of your children, the attachment of your parents, the attachment of family, in which somewhere down the line you get into that chakra view, and then that's the way you kind of deviate from your focus. You don't lose your focus because your focus is there, but you kind of deviate that little bit because of that karma path that you have to do, because you're in that karma kand of your life. So that is a tough part to deal with in life, of to leave that attachment of, you know, your absolute close and dear ones.
So, so long as that, that attachment that you have, no, Reshma, okay? That's what he tells us very clearly. He says here and there again that attachment should not get into the realm of desire. Because once then that it's a slippery slope after that. So if I'm attached to my daughter or if I'm attached to my wife, but I'm attached and that is leading me to have a set of expectations that my daughter will every day come in the morning and fall at my feet and take my blessings, then I'm going to get into trouble. Okay? Because if that doesn't happen, then I'm going to get into anger. And if I'm going to get into anger, then that I'm going to get into ignorance. And then all those other things will start with that. Okay? But if that attachment is free of desire, that's what he's talking. He talks of vairagya. That means 100%, if you're a mother, if you're a father, if you're a brother, if you're a sister, if you're a son, if you're a daughter, there will be an attachment, 100%. That's what he's also reminding us here, saying that, look, that's why he says, look, I am the father, I am the mother, I am the creator. Okay? And I like you. So if we can somehow separate these two things in life, okay, that attachment need not progress into desire or an expectation. Like Rajiv asked this question, I don't know when he asked this question sometime back, last week or week before that. If you can make sure that we can remove that, because the day that starts, then, it's a slide down. Keep this in mind. Okay. So, of course, I love my daughter. I love my wife. I love my friends. I love everybody. I'm attached to them. But is it possible to remove that one thought, that, look, because of this, I desire this. I expect this. Okay. If we can move away from that, I think we're doing fine. That's his message to us.
Ram, when you're talking in context of children, at some point in time, they move on in life.
Yeah.
They go on to do what they do. While you do support them in that, there are certain expectations which are there. The challenge comes in when you have those expectations, but do not let them know that you have that expectation. And if it happens, you're happy. If it doesn't happen, you move on. I think that's where the challenge lies. So one has to reach that plane.
Absolutely.
Personal experience. My son got married and moved on. And now he's living life in very difficult times, in a sales job in very difficult times. And therefore, my expectation is that we talk once or twice a week. That doesn't happen, but it doesn't perturb me. I know he's busy doing something.
I'll give you another dimension now.
Yeah.
One is, of course, you have certain expectations and that is tinged with desire and therefore you get upset or, you get angry and stuff like that. I'll tell you the other thing, which is even worse. Okay, which is again something that he refers to here. If you hear that my son is in touch with me every day and your son is not in touch with you every day, now that is a bigger issue according to me than the fact that your son is not in touch with you every day. No?
Agreed.
This comparative thing, is what really brings us down in life. Fair enough. I mean, the guy is busy. He's not in touch. Fair enough. I mean, that's okay. Right? But this comparative thing is really what.
So that comparative thing.
That's what gives rise to that anger.
Right.
He could, why can't you? And there is no answer to that question.
So that's what I'm trying to tell you, Ram, is that when that expectations are not met,
then anger comes.
And it doesn't perturb you in spite of this comparative.
Yeah.
Then you need, in my opinion, you've reached this detachment that you're talking about. Am I correct? Am I right? Am I wrong?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, because, his whole point in this entire chapter, this this Rajaguhyam and this Rajavidya that he talks about is this: that can you develop that particular knowledge and wisdom to remove you from doubt? And therefore, he takes us through this whole chapter on that, saying that be free of doubt, that there is this greatness within you. That is, allow it to manifest. Don't allow yourself to get dragged down by small stuff. That's his whole point, that there is this higher self which is there in you. Now, for God's sake, go use that higher self and reach what you should be reaching or do what you should be doing in your life. Don't allow these petty things to drag you down. Start recognizing the higher self within you. And of course, in the next chapter, we continue to explore this entire thing, because he goes on. As I said, this is the beginning of this entire exercise from now onwards, when he talks about what is the supreme divinity in you and how does it manifest itself in you. And it's a process that goes on. 10, 11 when he ultimately shows himself, and 12 when he talks in terms of, okay, how can you be a great bhakta? So this is a process that he has started off with us right now. His main lesson to us is this, that there is this higher self. I am in you. I dwell within you. Have faith in that fact, that there is a higher self within you. And don't allow small things like attachment, like desire, to cloud your ignorance, because then you will start questioning whether this is going to happen or that is not going to happen. That's his whole point.
Ram,
Yeah,
can I say something?
please, Preeti.
Okay, Ram, I just feel if a person changes his philosophy of life and tells himself that you are doing something because that is giving you pleasure, you're keeping your happiness in mind, and that's why you're doing it. It's not, that it's your responsibility or it is your duty or you're obliged to do something. That's my philosophy. Like, I will do for my children, for my family, or for anybody around, my friends. It's because it gives me immense pleasure. So because at that moment I'm happy, I feel great, I have done it. So I don't have any expectations. But what usually happens is that, when you're doing for so many people around, when it is your time of return, they do reciprocate with you in the same manner. And at that moment, the level of gratitude and thankfulness that you have is something which is immense. So if you keep reminding yourself, you're doing it for yourself. In return, if somebody gets happy, great for them, but you've done it to make yourself happy. I think it gets much more easier.
100%, Preeti. 100%. You're absolutely spot on. So long as you're doing it to make yourself happy and you're not expecting praise in return, you're not expecting recognition in return, you're not expecting a reward in return. But should that recognition come, should that reward come, should that praise come, great. I mean, as you very rightly put it, fantastic. Yeah, great. But I'm not going to feel unhappy that you didn't praise me. Okay? I'm going to do this because this is my Swadharma. Right? In the process, if you're going to praise me, great. And this is what I'm saying, that look, there is this action that I'm taking, there is that outcome that will happen, and there are manifestations of that outcome. If I don't allow those manifestations of that outcomes to cloud what I'm doing great. Yeah. And that's a great, happy way to live, Preeti, ultimately.
Yes.
That is Arjuna's, that is the lesson to Arjuna from here, from us.
Thank you, Ram.
Yes, Balkrishna, sir.
Yeah. With our goal to achieve Krishna, only that is our goal, to achieve Krishna. So every day we go in the same direction. We take the path. But how do we know at any given point of time that we are not wrong, we are not deviating?
Sir, that you will know that only on one condition, sir. That, when you're on that path to realize the Krishna within you, okay? When you're on that path to realize the Krishna within you, sir, the only way to know whether you're on the right, whether you're continuing to be on the right path or you're not getting there is to keep asking yourself this simple question. Okay? And if you realize that there are these 6 gates to hell that he talks about, which is Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, and Matsarya. I think the reality check for all of us is that. Okay? That on a daily basis, are we allowing any of these to come in and crowd us? Because if it is, then I don't think you need to course correct and come back onto the path that you need to come back.
Right.
Okay? That I think is a beautiful reality check for all of us. That if you're doing something, like Rahul said, there will be opposition, 100% there will be opposition. People will not agree with what you're trying to do. People will oppose you because they want to oppose you. They don't like you. So many things will be there in life. So that is life. You can't expect that in this journey of your Swadharma that you will have only all positive things happening to you. You will have so many challenges that will come in your way. But when those challenges come, how are you overcoming that? Or are you allowing one of these 6 to crowd? And that's the reality check, and that's the course correction that we can take.
Right.
Somebody Preeti talked about gratitude right now. Look at what he says are his manifestations. He says, I am the fire, I am the father, I am the mother, I am, the syllable Om, I am the Vedas. Okay, I am the imperishable one. So even if you do not get what you want to get today, even if you don't, can you start being grateful for what you have? And that is his, again, manifestations here, saying that, look, all these are where you can see me. Okay? So if there is something that you've done and that you managed to get all of this, then be happy with what you have there. Okay? Because you can see me in that. Right? So today, if my target today or my goal today is that I want to go and create something like this and I'm not getting there, and it is very possible that I won't get there, can I start seeing all the other things that have happened to me which are good today and start seeing Krishna in all of it and be grateful to that? Okay? So if I've achieved only 25% of the way, if I've achieved 50% of the way, can I be happy that I've achieved 25%? Okay? And not get disappointed, not get angry that I've not achieved 75%. Because the day I get angry that I have not achieved that 75%, then after that, that whole, chain of ignorance will start, and I'm not going to go anywhere after that.
Right. Understood. Thank you so much.
Right. Any other observations, any other thoughts, any other questions?
Good morning, Ram. Pankaj here.
Pankaj, how are you?
I'm good. Great session, and you concluded it and gave a very nice comprehension about today's. I also wanted, if anybody can or you can share the thoughts on any definitive steps or any steps which we can practice to move towards the goodness in us, so that the goodness in us manifests. In any action that we take, we can react in 2 ways. But if we practice certain steps, maybe we'll come out with better action or reaction to any, if I could come across.
Wonderful. I think Preeti has already shared a very great step. She said that, look, I do it because I am becoming happy. I do it because it gives me happiness. It will be a reaction that somebody else will, come up with, but that's okay. I will do it. But that's a great point. Let's open this up. I mean, instead of just being a one-way talk, let's open it up. Let's frame your question and maybe start with Babji and ask him. Babji sir, what do you think? I mean, Pankaj's thing is, what do you do? Yeah. Pankaj, would you like to quickly reframe your question so that everybody can then participate?
Yes, you said that the Lord is saying that there is goodness in all of us, and we must try to manifest that goodness and the divinity within us to reach the Lord for every action that we take. So I was asking if there are any steps which we could practice, slowly, and then so that we always move towards a better reaction to a situation.
Okay. Babji sir, any thoughts on that? Anything that you'd like to share?
Thank you, Ram. I'm just trying to absorb what you're saying so that we will find a better way. But having said that, yes, to the best of my knowledge or to the best of my understanding, I believe what Preeti was saying is right, because you give without expectation, and if that makes you happy and that produces results in your recipients, I think that's one of the primary objectives. I think what we should practice, because you give without expectations. That is what we expect. I mean, we practice. But the second part is, I think, personal. This is my personal experience, and I believe that it has led me up to this age and this time. Is that there is a destiny which is governing you. The course correction is something that you have to willfully or thoughtfully participate in. But having said that, like you always believe in course correction, you always believe in the God, and allow him or allow the destiny that has been designed for you, or the life that has been destined for you. You just follow the path. I mean, I think there is a what do you call, invisible hand which kind of course corrects you as if you are making a mistake. Because if you believe in the destiny, if you believe in the God, I think your destination is very clear. But having said that, yes, we need to also be understanding of the way we are living life, so that I think the gratitude is always there towards God, towards humanity, towards compassion, towards the society. I think that's where, if those are inculcated and practiced, I think most of our problems would take care of themselves. And this is my understanding, but I am just still learning. Although I'm 60, I continue to learn, and this Bhagavad Gita session has been a very, very a retrospective and a very, very introspective analysis of what the kind of life we have led so far and what we should be living going forward. Thank you, Ram, for that. And I don't know if I've answered Pankaj's question, but this is what I.
It's a wonderful share. I think it's a wonderful share. Would anybody else like to?
Yeah, Ram, this is Srini.
Yes, Srini, go ahead, please.
In my own way, I would like to share what I've
Sure,
and I think
I don't know, I'll find it.
faith, devotion, single-pointed focus, and detachment from the outcome. The single-pointed focus still keeps you going towards the results, but it is the point-in-time detachment that enables you stay focused in a big way. But I think the other larger point is the need to take action. The detachment is to the outcome, not to the action. The action needs to be taken. Start with small action, but move towards significant action. These are the takeaways that I have in some sense. I think what Pankaj asked also, clarify for myself that what I have learned and what I wish to practice. I think the key is focus, practice, detachment, and taking action and moving towards significant action.
I think, Pankaj, the important point, I think we're all 9:30, so let me. I think the three crucial things, though, Pankaj, that he talks about in this particular chapter. I think my biggest takeaways from this is this, that one, that there is this higher self waiting to express itself. Give it some time, allow it to come to the surface. There is this God, there is this Godhood within you, there is this higher self within you. Allow that, recognize that higher self. And he takes us so many examples in this chapter of how you can recognize him. That's one. The second, I think, important thing that he talks about is the power of simplicity. Try and make it as simple as possible in life. I think, if you make it simple in life, life is going to be good. Yeah. The more complex you make life, I think life is going to get to be that much more complex. one important lesson that he drives in this whole thing is the power of simplicity. And the other important lesson that he drives in this, as Srini mentioned, is this whole. So how can you try and not be attached? Okay, believe me when I'm saying this, it's a very, very, very slippery slope. It's not an easy slope at all. There is no ladder that you can climb the slope of attachment. There is no lift that you can get it to and say, oh boy, you know what? I've conquered this mountain called attachment. It's a very, very slippery slope. So as you keep climbing up, you will keep slipping and keep falling. No doubt about that. Okay? But I think he's telling us these two important things. Think that there is this higher self, allow it to manifest itself, number one. Make it simple. Okay? And try and do this focus, abhyasa, bhakti, which is devotion, practice, which is abhyasa, and vairagya, non-attachment. Okay? Try and see if you can get onto that, okay, as far as possible. So the way I look at it, Pankaj, is very simple. I do an audit every day with myself. And I say, look, how many times did I lose my temper today? Okay. How many times did I get anxious? How many times did I get how many times did I get jealous? How many times did I get arrogant? How many times, all those 6 things that he talks about. I'm a man, I'm a human being, right? So I'm entitled to get into those things. That is my Janma Siddha Adhikar. But can I try and reduce that? Is it possible for me to reduce that? Can I get back to what is my Swadharma instead of getting detracted from that? So I think that is the learning today. Saying that, look, if you want to know, keep it simple. Have faith that there is this higher self within that will blossom and manifest itself. Okay? Try and see if you can do this focus, bhakti, practice, non-attachment, and keep moving. That you don't allow those 6 evils to manifest in your life. Okay? I think that would be a nice template to work with on a daily basis. Saying that, okay, can I do a daily audit and figure out, this is something which I did which is wrong. Okay?
One more, just not an answer, but I hope to get an answer by the time we finish our session, is that, yes, you have given us the parameters, but like a revision, like an abhyasa, we do need a guru in our life. Everybody needs a guru. Guru can be anybody. It can be even a youngster in the family, somebody who bounce off. So during the course of our discourse that we are having, I would like to learn how to identify a guru or how to rijhav a guru to give some attention to me, and how to select a guru and how to be a bhakt of the guru and various things, what I mean. These are just thoughts in my mind, but that is one thing I would like to learn. Because you are making me reach towards that. What I'm hearing is telling me that I should talk to somebody, I should learn from somebody, and it's a continuous process.
Absolutely. I think, if you can make, of course, please do get ready to accept a guru in your life. Say that only when you become yogya, shiksha, then the guru will appear in your life. Make yourself ready by becoming a empty receptacle, saying that, look, I've emptied out my entire thought process and I'm now ready for receiving a guru who will appear wherever. That is one. Let me tell you one thing before you get there.
What is this?
If you can develop an attitude of being a continuous learner, okay, then if you are open to the fact that you're going to be learning from everybody that you're going to come across today in your life, that is something that will be very, very useful. I'll tell you, I'll end by telling you a story. I used to work in Bombay. Some of you know that. And one of my clients in Bombay was in Vikhroli. And I had a terrible meeting that day. Terrible meeting means, I mean, you know, I was just beaten, pummeled, you know, you can, and you know, being in the advertising business, you can imagine what would have been my halat at the end of the day. And you know, it just didn't end because one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, up till the vice president. So it started off with the junior most brand manager, who, you know, went his fury, and then it just kept going because they needed to vent out. Okay? Believe me, it started at about 2 in the afternoon and went on till 6 in the evening. And you can imagine by 6, I was completely destroyed as a human being. Okay? And it was a very big account for us. It was not a small account. Okay? So I went and met the president at 6 o'clock and I said, you know, I don't know what to do. He said, look, have they vented it out? I said, yeah, they've all vented it out. Did you react? I said, no, I didn't react to anybody. He said, good. Now just go home and sleep, and tomorrow morning you and I will catch up and we'll figure out what to do and how to retrieve the situation. Okay? I just wanted these guys to vent out because each time I kept talking, they were venting it out on me. I said, great. My agency had made a blunder. Okay. So Pankaj, I came out of that factory in Vikhroli. And for some reason, I don't know why I didn't have my car that day. I got into a cab, and if you recall Bombay, you know, you search for a cab with a music system. I'm talking of the 90s. Okay, you search for a cab with a music system, and you search for a cab that has got a dark, what do you call, a film at the back and stuff like that. And you ask that guy, "Kaun sa cassette hai?" and things like that, and then you get into that cab. I got into a cab that came. I sat down and I said, I just let out a huge sigh, Pankaj. Huge sigh, you know, I mean, like that, you know, Baapre, I'm out of that thing, now let me get back home, yeah. Okay? And I used to stay in Kulaba. That guy looked big, and this is a typical bhaiya from, you know,
UP.
Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, and one of those guys, you know, mustard oil in his hair and that dirty brown jacket that he's worn and you know, all that stuff. And he looks at me, he stops the car and he says, क्या हुआ बहुत बुरा दिन था क्या? I said, अरे यार भैया तू चलाना गाड़ी यार तू क्या मेरा अभी माथा मत फोड़ यार मेरा तो दिमाग. He says एक काम करो आप सामने आके बैठो. I said तू क्या लेगा तू गाड़ी चलाने के लिए? He said नहीं तुम सामने आके बैठो मेरे साथ. तो मेरे पे चढ़ जा रहा है यार. He said no तुम सामने आके बैठो. So I went and sat next to him. Now, can you imagine this typical wizened, must have been 50, 60, 65-year-old cabbie in Bombay, you know, seen Bombay, seen life, seen everything. He says, बहुत बुरा दिन था क्या? I said, हाँ भैया बहुत बुरा दिन था, तू कैसेट चालू करो, तो मेरे को घर लेके चलो. And he says, मैं आपको breathing सिखाऊंगा, सीखोगे? I said, क्या सिखाओगे? I said, आपको सांस लेना सिखाऊंगा, सीखोगे? ऐसे ठीक है तेरे को मुंह तेरा चुप करने के लिए वो भी सिखा चल ठीक है वो भी सही है इसे नहीं सीखना चाहिए आपको सिखाओ. Believe me Pankaj, he taught me the technique of breathing. Yeah. Within 5 minutes, before that he took my address. I told him I want to go to Kalagoda, Khyber Hotel, where my office was. Within 5 minutes, Pankaj, I had passed out. I practice that breathing technique even now, Pankaj. Now, can you imagine the president of one of the largest advertising agencies in Bombay, wearing on his, you know, Raymond suit, cufflinks to match, tie, matching shoes, etc., 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 sitting next to a typical wizened old bhaiya who taught me breathing. And when he brought me to Khyber, he stopped the car. You know, he woke me up. And then he said, "Oh, मैंने आपको ये सिखाया." So, are we ready for the learning, Pankaj? That is the problem. I think our ego. You know, my typical ego was, "Boss, what is this bhaiya fellow, yaar? I mean, क्या बात कर रहा है यार? Come on, bhaiya." My initial reaction was, "What? Come on, give me a break." So I'm saying if we are ready to learn, no Pankaj, from everybody, the watchman, the driver, the fruit seller, the flower seller, the vegetable seller, everybody has a lesson to teach us. Fantastic. All right, good. So we catch up tomorrow morning, ladies and
Ram.
Sorry?
I need to say something.
Please tell me that. Please, Preeti.
You know, Pankaj, I have a guru who taught me something very, very important in my life. He had conducted an HRD program in Out India, and he taught me the power of mind. And what he said was that it is your mind which decides whether you want to get affected or you don't want to get affected. So you have to tell yourself that if there is somebody in your life, is that person so important that you are going to allow that person to affect you, to angry you, to maybe whatever, make you upset? Is that person really important in your life, because of whom you might get affected? Because today, even if I have to get angry on Pankaj, I have to have that anger in me. So is Pankaj that important that he can upset my peace of mind? So that is my mind which will decide, do I give that importance to him? So if you're not important to me, I'm not going to get angry with you. So this was something my guru taught me, and my guru is Ramji. He's the one who taught this. And yes, that has really and maybe we were much younger that time, you know, so I was taking down notes, and I kept revising. And yes, it is up to you to decide whether somebody has to affect you or not affect you. So don't get all these negative emotions in you, because you're spoiling your inner self. That person is really not worthy. So just drop it. 2 years, एक से सुनो, दूसरे से निकालो, and you're sorted. That's my lesson.
Not only that, Pankaj, I have had several experiences in life which has taught me to look back, take a step back, look at the situation, and then move on. I learned to control my anger when my father was dying in hospital 30 years ago. And I was frustrated at the way things were happening with the doctor, the answers I was getting. To overcome that situation, I would go for a walk down that Kemp's Corner thing, Kambala Hill Hospital. I used to walk all the way to Grant Road Station and come back cool, and then go and talk to the doctor. And over the years, I have learned. Similarly, very profound experience that I had was when Dhirubhai Ambani died, and I was watching it on TV, and I suddenly realized here is a rich man, the richest in India today, lying on a wooden stretcher next to somebody unknown, waiting to go into the pyre. So what have you achieved? Nothing. At the end of the day, everything in life comes back to your equal. So that taught me how to get out of this thing that I'm going to achieve this, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be this. Take what you get, be happy with it, and move on. It taught me this power of disassociation. So experiences, situations, thoughts, and as Ram says, audit every night is something I've been doing for many, many years today. Every night I sit back and think, what happened to me today? And why did it happen? How did I react? And it takes you a very long way. It takes you, I mean, I went through same training session in my college where in 60 minutes, 12 of my peers told me 60 flaws that I have that I need to work on. And I really worked on it. That chart is still with me. You know, sometimes when I get lost, I open that chart and read. I said, okay, this is the way I'm doing. So Guru is all around you. Your Guru, Krishna, is all around you. Your experiences which come through him is actually guiding you. You have to look at it and say, okay, this is what I'm going to learn out of this situation. And this is how I'm going to manifest it in my life so that I am happy.
Very true.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you so much. We will have another session on this, probably on 16th, 15th, I think we will finish the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. And on 16th, if Ram agrees and everyone agrees, we will have a session specifically for this, because हम सब के साथ कुछ ना कुछ ऐसा हुआ है, सबने कहीं ना कहीं से कुछ ना कुछ सीखा है और जाना है. Interesting question, thought process, Pankaj, you started here. मतलब देखने से लग रहा है कि सबको कुछ ना कुछ बोलना है, but see, time is not permitting.
I know. But anyway, so we've had a wonderful session today, and I I'm grateful to another person who's taught me a lot, my elder brother Ashok, who's joined us from Vizag today. Thank you very much, Ashok, for being here. He's another person who's taught me quite a lot in my life. Good. So let us end this session with praying to Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
थैंक यू, धन्यवाद. कल मिलेंगे वापस सबसे.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.